Welcome to another episode of Assess That with Tom and Nat.
And happy Monday, everyone. We hope that you had a great weekend and that you're all ready for the week ahead. And today, we are so excited to welcome Danielle Paloposki, one of our Canadian Assessment Center consultants. Danielle is an educator and consultant who has dedicated her work to helping teachers reimagine assessment with clarity and confidence.
Right. We're going to explore two topics with Danielle today. We're going to talk about how to implement outcome-based assessment, outcome-based grading, and we're also going to talk a little bit about AI. This is going to be a bit of a preview for an upcoming webinar Danielle's going to host. So we're excited to talk about those two topics.
So that's today's plan. Let's get to it.
Today, we are thrilled to introduce you to Danielle Paloposki, one of our Canadian Assessment Center consultants and another leading voice in rethinking how teachers approach assessment and grading. We had, of course, listeners, we had Carly on last month. So listeners, you are sensing a trend here that we are introducing you to our CAC team.
Yes. And Danielle is someone who is doing all kinds of really innovative work in Canada to modernize assessment. First of all, she has something called the Competency Code Program, in which she helps educators implement more purpose-driven, authentic systems for student ownership. And we actually met Danielle when she was leading assessment change and grading reform in her school when she attended the Empowerment Ecosystem Summit back in May. 2023?
Yeah,
oh my gosh. Feels like yesterday. But it became so evident to both Tom and I very quickly that she had a depth of expertise around assessment and grading, but just a passion for education and a passion for human beings and change. And we're just so thrilled to have her here.
Danielle, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you both. This is surreal, and I'm so happy that I get to join you today.
Yeah, we're happy you're here, and we are certainly happy that you are on our team. And we want to get into some conversations around assessment, around AI, talk a little bit about your upcoming webinar that we're going to have and host. But before we get into that, we want to talk a little bit about just education in general. What was it about this profession that drew you to education? What inspired you to get into teaching, get into education? And specifically, what was it about the topic of assessment that really caught your attention to the point where you've become a leading voice in this area of assessment and grading reform?
You're so kind. First, what got me into education, I think, is quite similar to most educators. But again, I don't want to tell everyone else's story. It's more about mine. But I was truly inspired by some educators in my own experience as a high school student. I had an incredible few coaches. And I was always a student athlete. And then I also, that kind of like, because I had relationships with them as a coach, it really transitioned back into the classroom, into the courses they were teaching, and they really had a positive impact on me. And it was really more about, like, they had an impact on me in terms of how I carried myself as a person, as a human, as a caring human on this planet, and also how I could shape my identity and be a confident person out there. And they gave me a sense of confidence where I didn't have it in other areas of my younger years. And so that was huge for me. And so because they served as an example of that, I think it just kind of inspired me that I could be that person for other kids as well. And so that's kind of what drew me into education. And selfishly, it's like, we just get so energized by kids. I love that. I love that we can have an impact on our kids. I think it was in like my first or second year teaching. Oh, it probably would have been my third or fourth year teaching, where I had a little note dropped in my box from a student I'd taught like 3 or 4 years ago. And she had said something along the line of, I'm in nursing because of you.
Oh.
Like, she chose a pathway because of me. And it like just clicked on, it really brought this sense of really more purpose and intention of how I connect and interact with kids and people, because everything we say and do matters. And then I get emotional. But already, we're like 3 minutes in, and Danielle's a little bit emotional.
It's just getting started, folks.
Feel free.
Everyone who knows me would be like, yeah, we have a timer going. We knew it would happen.
We set the over-under at 5 minutes.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, you won.
But the other piece, Tom, you asked me about what got me into assessment. And I really see that it was really the key to unlocking the potential in every student in my classes. Because the moment I was clear with kids about what we were doing, why it was important, but also clear about expectations and clarity around criteria, about success criteria and what it looked like to do something well, I could work with kids. And it wasn't just about me collecting papers, grading them, and then putting them in a grade book. it transitioned to being really clear and then opening up dialogue with kids. And then you get to know them and get to know who they are. And that's the power of assessment. And so for me, it just really unlocked every kid in my classroom, and it allowed me to connect with them more deeply, which then allowed that empowerment to happen because we build a sense of confidence with our kids, and then they start to believe in themselves because we believe in their ability. And so that for me was like, I was hooked. It was like, wow, I didn't even know because I never saw assessment as something like that. But I think then it just lends itself to like, now that I've unlocked this like secret as a teacher, I have to share this with other educators. And so began the sort of like, as colleagues would say, it's just sharing like, did you know you could do this? Did you know? And this is what happens. And so, yeah. And so it's a really powerful thing. And so assessment to me is really about like connection with kids to really deeply empower, build confidence in them and shape their identity in a positive way.
Love it. I've often used the analogy of like discovering it was like you had this comfy, well-worn sweater of school and there's like a loose thread on it.
Yeah.
And you're one day it's just like, what do we have here? And you tug it and it starts to like unravel, which sounds really negative and like destructive, but it actually like reveals and uncovers this beauty that we just didn't understand school to be in this old, comfortable, nostalgic sweater that all of us carry into that space. So I love your take of what it uncovered for you. But something we often hear in the outcomes-based assessment realm, especially here in Canada, is this idea that if we go that route, it's just going to be less freedom, more control on teachers, more rigidity, and they don't want to give up their autonomy to go in this direction. So as you've played in your space of discovering assessment and, spreading the good word, how have you found that not to be true? Like what have you found has actually led towards more teacher creativity and more student voice rather than less?
Yeah, I've also noticed that this is an incredibly common misconception that somehow by now implementing outcomes that now we've lost teacher autonomy. I think anytime teachers are a little bit worried, it's coming from a place of the unknown and fear. And so when the fear is really maybe because they don't know how it could look. Yeah. Right. And so I've worked only in BC schools to really transform so far. Most educators that I work with is that we're in two systems right now. One is inherited and one we're building. And so we really have to, I think, look at in BC, the one we're trying to build is competency-focused. It's how we're building proficiency and skills. And so where we find freedom is in that. And what I learned from Tom was really, it's how we use the content and concepts as a vehicle to build those proficiency and competencies. And so there's incredible freedom in that. There's incredible freedom in that. And so in BC, we have these big ideas. And really big ideas are just these enduring understandings we want kids to know. And so, like, for example, just to bring context to it, in Anatomy Physiology 12, where I did a lot of these changes in my own classroom space, there's a big idea of like homeostasis is maintained through physiological processes. So this is a big idea. And in Anatomy Physiology 12, there's 3 enduring understandings. My job as a teacher is that when kids come into my classroom in September and they leave in June, they leave with those enduring understandings, those big ideas. So as soon as I teach from bigger ideas and essential and these enduring understandings, I then have this freedom and flexibility to go, well, what concepts am I going to use to teach them how to design and build investigations and test hypotheses? And that's incredible freedom and flexibility in how I do that. I can choose which concepts to teach which skills, and then I can create those conditions for kids to then have student voice and choice in how they demonstrate that. And so I hope that's clear, but that's really the freedom and flexibility in our curriculum in BC, but we can see that in any curriculum that's competency-based. Yeah, because it's just when competencies are what we're placing value on in the classroom, then it really then frees us up to go, well, how can we leverage those concepts and content topic areas to then build those deeper demonstrations of learning and connect that to student voice and choice? And so, I hope that answers your question.
Well, I can't argue with you since you gave me a shout out.
Yeah,
I really
he's like,
appreciate that.
that
I'm
Tom
like,
guy sounds
say
brilliant.
more, Danielle. That guy sounds awesome. But you bring up a couple of interesting points that I just want to highlight. The first is that what often looks like resistance is a lack of clarity. And I know Natalie and I talk about that all the time. And sometimes it is admittedly challenging for veteran teachers to say, I don't quite understand what that would look like, or I can't see it. So it's easier to say that's a bad idea. And I know that sounds cynical, and I don't mean to sort of make people sound cynical. It's just a natural human instinct that we have. The other part that I think is very important to highlight is that every curriculum across the country, across Canada and the United States, has competencies in them. It just so happens that BC names them and highlights them overtly. But you go to any curriculum across North America, and you're not really going to find the words critical thinking, but you are going to find words like analyze, evaluate, critique, hypothesize, compare, contrast, infer. It's embedded in the curriculum. So for those listening who are outside of British Columbia, know that competencies are a part of your curriculum. We just don't name it that way. And there are times where we have layers of choice, right? So we have a choice to put kids into collaborative teams and have them collaborate. Or there are times where the outcomes actually ask kids to be innovative and creative. It just doesn't say creativity. It might say problem solving. So I think you highlight a very important point, which is that there's competencies either overtly named in, like it is in BC, or they're not hidden, but they're just not named the way we name them in BC. But that doesn't mean they don't exist in those curriculum. But I want to get back to this question about grading, which of course is a hot topic that we often talk about, and we know that you are helping support schools, because in that traditional grading system, we know that there's often been a conflating of effort, behavior, learning, all boiling down to a single percentage grade. And of course, in BC, we still have percentages in the upper grade levels, and across Canada, percentages are an issue as well. What, from your perspective, what do you think is the first mindset or structural shift that a school needs to make to truly separate that achievement from everything else and really focus on the evidence of learning?
I think that's such a great question. It's this illusion of accuracy in that percentage-based grade, and then you unpack it. A lot of times when I work with educators, I have this slide where I have them define what an 80% student, give me some criteria to define an 80% student.
Right.
And then they define. And I don't blame our educators. Everyone doesn't come to work thinking like, I really just want to list some criteria about what a kid is and make comments. But one of the common comments for an 80% student is with a little more effort, they can achieve, or with a little more effort, or they just need more effort.
Yeah.
And for us to assume, I often will kind of stop, and not as a means to embarrass, but really as a means to bring awareness to our bias and our judgment and our lack of clarity in our judgment. Because what evidence do we have? And first of all, is that even the goal?
Yeah.
We should be really clarifying what those actionable learning standards are. And yes, they require effort as a learning habit, but that effort itself, who's to say, like, let's take my class, for example, as a teacher. I saw my kids for 3 times a week. 3 times a week. That was 3 hours I saw them. That was it. That's all I saw them.
Yeah.
So 3 hours over how many hours in 1 week? Let's do the math. 24 hours times 7, that's over 150 hours a week, yes? So 3 hours out of 150 hours for a week, and I'm making a judgment for the 3 hours I see my kids that it's a lack of effort.
Yeah.
Who's to say that kid isn't at home, in their bedroom, alone, not understanding anything, but trying so hard to meet the expectations the teacher has set. And we have no idea what happens behind those closed doors. We have no idea the demand on people at home. We don't know what their life structure is. We don't know the responsibilities. I can go on for hours about this. And so it's really talking about, it's rehumanizing, first of all, I think, which is the most important, is rehumanizing that education. That I hate the electronic grade book. I think I hate's a strong word. I'm sorry.
No,
that
say
word.
it. Lean in.
But it is. That's a
Dislike
big,
strongly.
Loathe entirely.
Yeah.
What I often will say, it's like it was the worst invention, and it really was, because it somehow built this illusion of accuracy and gave teachers this this sense of confidence in in how they could communicate learning to families. And it gave families a sense of confidence that these grades were meaningful
Right.
when in fact they're not. And so the bigger structural shifts is like looking at how do we separate
Yeah.
these? How do we redefine what counts as learning? And
Mhm.
so if these are actionable learning standards and we're going to value competencies in a grade book,
Mhm.
how do we define what that looks like in BC and in other areas where we have levels? What do those 4 levels look like? And let's bring
Mhm.
Yeah.
clarity to it.
Yeah.
Let's be very clear what that is. And then um, the goal isn't to reward or punish. It's really to figure out what the learner can do in this point in time, and then what are the next steps moving forward
Mhm.
in terms of the criteria that we clearly lay out.
Mhm.
And so it's teaching, and not even teaching, it's just sharing thinking with educators to create a safe space for these friction points. I keep saying we're living in 2 systems, the inherited and the one we're building. And so there's a real friction there for our
Mhm.
educators.
Yeah.
Because
Mhm.
as you said, like some teachers have been teaching for 20, 30, 40 years. And
Mhm.
so you're now like, I'm coming in saying it doesn't work this way anymore. And they're like,
Mhm.
who are you to tell me that it doesn't work this way? I've been
Right.
doing my job really well for a very long time. And so, but now the focus is skills based where these complex tasks are required. Whereas in the
Yeah.
inherited system, it's so routine and based on
Mhm.
memorization and
Yeah.
recall. And so they're 2 different systems. So it's really articulating what is the purpose of school now?
Yeah.
What are
Mhm.
we valuing in terms of skill building? What does that look like more clearly?
Mhm.
And then designing to capture that and work with kids, but also creating a space for teachers to feel the friction points between those 2 systems, to speak openly about those friction points so that we can engage in deeper conversations about how we can really move to set up learners for the next piece.
Absolutely.
And I know if I say real world, Tom will get fired up.
Don't even. Yeah.
No,
It's
no,
a trigger
no,
in
not
this,
really. It's not a trigger. It's just when we
no.
make reference to kids not living in the real world,
Right?
that's the trigger.
That's the
There's so
trigger.
much gold in that answer, Danielle. Like
So
honestly,
much.
the notion that grades are a function of effort. In the 20 years that I spent working in the school systems, never mind the last 15, I've
Mm,
never I've never seen it correlated where the hardest working kids always get the highest scores or grades. There are
mm,
kids that scratch and claw their way into even just a barely passing situation, and that has to be honored and
Mhm.
supported.
mhm,
And we have to acknowledge the fact that it isn't just a function that everybody who doesn't get 100% or doesn't get an extending or an exemplary, somehow they have not put forth the requisite amount of effort. That to me is such a
Yeah.
overly simplistic way to look at learning. And that illusion of precision
Oh,
is
duh.
such a
mm,
great point about,
Mhm.
something that Natalie and I both talk about a lot with schools is the fact that levels of proficiency assign categorical meaning,
Mm.
not mathematical precision. There's no such
mm.
thing as a 3.25 or a 3.27. That gives an illusion of mathematical precision that doesn't exist really, but we're always sort of, resonant to lean on those calculations.
Yeah.
So some really that answer, honestly, there, listeners, I
There's
would
so
encourage you
much. Just go back.
go back and listen to that
Pause.
answer again. There's so much gold
Rewind, go back
in
like
that
2
answer for
minutes
sure.
and get a notebook. And there's like that was a masterclass in and of itself.
100%.
But I also want to double tap on the parallel between what Danielle just said and the need for clear expectations around the learning and what success looks like
Yeah.
for kids is
Mm.
a part of the barrier for the educators as
Mhm.
well.
Yeah.
Because when there isn't any time spent really unpacking, like, what does evidence of competencies look like? Like, how
Yes.
will I know when I'm seeing it? We actually have
Yes.
a friend and a colleague by the name of Cassandra Erkins who said it beautifully once that novice teachers notice behavior, but master teachers notice learning.
Yeah.
And
Mm.
until intentional work has been done to help teachers notice and name the learning,
Mhm.
we can't then turn around and be like, all you're doing is noticing the behavior because there has been no criteria or system
Right.
set up for them to go, oh, that's what I'm looking for. Because to your point, like once people get it, like once they see it, and just like with kids, it's
Yeah.
very empowering. It's very motivating.
Yeah.
It feels very attainable.
Mhm.
And so I'm glad that you really like talked about that need for clarity for not only the students, but also for the teachers.
I'm reminded when I was in high school, I mean, creativity, like the system that we went through as students, my experience was if we were creative, it was because we added some color to our report or
some
to our
glitter.
assignment.
Yeah.
And that was creativity.
Glitter.
I never actually saw creative thinking in science, and I'm a science teacher.
Yeah.
And I taught like that for many years, where this creativity and innovative thinking, it wasn't about that. It was about add a little more color to your title page and you get some extra marks for it. Whereas now it's like, oh my gosh, if I have to problem solve and I have to implement multiple strategies to solve real world or conceptual problems, which is one of the standards in BC for science, for senior science, it's now, that's all creative thinking. It's really thinking strategically, unpacking what are the constraints that I have to consider, and then coming up with solutions. And there's multiple ways people can do that. Like, and kids can solve that problem. So like creativity, it's not in a box of color.
No.
And so it's just, and it's like you said, if teachers just understand it, and that's the key, right? It empowers educators to see, oh, that makes sense. And yes, you know what? That's exactly what our kids need. They need to understand how to do that because it's a transferable skill.
Absolutely.
Sorry, but,
I mean, as Tom brilliantly wrote in his book, Growing Tomorrow's Citizens in Today's Classrooms, with a couple colleagues, Nicole and Cassandra, you know, what these competencies provide is adaptive expertise. They are collectively how we learn, upskill, reskill, and these are the things that are needed in our world now more than ever. We were just talking the other day about, you know, there's this big crisis in the labor industry, and, you know, everybody is losing jobs and being replaced by AI. And every time I open TikTok or anything, it's just like crisis, crisis, crisis. And all I hear is like opportunity. Like we should be going, holy, we are now more than ever not just going into jobs that are guaranteed to us for 30 to 40 years and we don't have to ever learn or grow or change. We have to be so adaptable and agile. And that's just how the world is now. And so to not be focusing on these things, I feel like now is just like total negligence to kids. But anyways, I digress. On the note, to continue with this thread of like thinking about how do we bring in outcomes-based assessment and grading systems, competency-based systems, what we often find in the work, and we're sure you do too, and have as a leader within schools and now helping schools, is there's an implementation gap. Often the leader like completely understands it from like an expertise perspective. Like they've gone to the trainings, they've read the books, they've talked to the consultants, they get it. But as soon as it gets into their culture, things start to fall apart pretty quickly. And it never quite manifests in the ways that they were hoping it would. So I guess our question is, what have you seen leads to some of that implementation gap when people go to make this happen in reality? And how have you found through your experiences leaders could be better equipped to mind the gap, if you will?
I think, and I'm hesitant because everyone's trying their best. This is why I'm hesitant, right? And so I want to approach this with like the best intentions. But I think when assessment is seen as an initiative, I think it really undermines the value of what we're trying to do. And I think even so, when leaders understand that assessment is not a thing, but it's actually the foundation to good teaching and learning, that is essential for us to then create time and space for teachers then to find value in that. Well, what does that look like? Why is that important? And then how do we do it well, right? And so I think it's that implementation gap. It's how are we creating conditions for if we want learners to really, if we want to build kids as lifelong learners, we want them to engage in really messy, process-oriented learning. And if that's what we want our teachers to adopt, then we have to create conditions where our teachers can feel safe to take risks, where teachers can feel safe to share ideas, but also experiment with their practice and make mistakes, and then share those mistakes as opportunities to grow and learn and move forward. And so it's really like unpacking, I think, the systemic shifts that are required for this change and really going like, what are the norms and actions we have to more intentionally create so that our teachers value learning as a process. They're not just valuing end products and tasks that we're going to put into a grade book, but they're seeing that really this whole journey, it's really about the journey. It's not about the end part. And so in the schools that I've led these changes, it really has been creating a space of like, we've used design cycle thinking.
Yeah.
Because I think this is something that was so overlooked when I was younger. I mean, I'm so old, but in school, I never really learned about the design cycle and
Yeah.
this iterative process. And I thought like it was just so eye-opening to me. And luckily I came across a colleague who really like shared his expertise with me. And then we created this professional learning where teachers engaged in this iterative process. And to even think that that's new, not like 10 years ago for me, it's kind of sad because that's what learning is. It's an iterative process where we just can now gather more information as we go and understand, oh, I'm not there yet. Why do I know this? I can see evidence there. And then how do I move forward? And then the second piece is that learning is not in isolation. It's collaborative. And so it's really building these spaces for teachers to collaborate, to create time for them, but also for a meaningful purpose, right? And so being very clear about what are the systems that we have to build in place? What are our goals? What do grades mean? How are we reporting now? Anyway, I'm going off on a whole tangent, but
it's a big question.
I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, definitely. We talk a lot about the interconnectedness between taking up assessment literacy as a topic of professional development and professional learning communities.
Yeah.
We spend a lot of time talking about this, especially in the work that we've done in the US with Solution Tree, because I didn't come from a context when I was leading the work that was doing professional learning communities, really.
Right.
But through the assessment work, we became a professional learning community because it just so naturally starts to happen. If you have clear criteria that really matter to you, on goals, that really matter to you, and you've all decided together, and everyone's voice has been honored, so now you feel you're a part of a team and not just an isolated teacher, then the next question becomes, hey, how did you work on that one goal that we talked about? Because I'm really struggling with getting evidence of conflict resolution. I know we all said it's so important, but like, what are you all doing? And then the next meeting, everybody comes together and is like, oh, I actually did this one really interesting activity I'd love to share with you all. And I'll show you kind of what the kids did. And it just naturally turns into this community where you're trying to get better, richer evidence of learning and responding in two ways. Either we didn't get the evidence we needed. What can we do about it? How do we get our kids there? Or we are getting this evidence. This is incredible. How do we amplify and how do we enrich this?
Yeah.
That's a professional learning community.
And it's getting people excited about learning, right? Learning in a way that empowers their practice, right? When you find out that when kids are dysregulated, they can't actually think. Like they can't think. The science behind their brain, they can't think reasonably. They can't actually like, and so when it's leveraging research and leveraging information to empower practice, and I think that's one of the like best pieces of it, but is to create those conditions for teachers to do that.
Yes.
And I've just spent the last like 3 or 4 months interviewing educators from all over BC, some in Yellowknife because my focus in my work right now is in competency-based, which I love BC's curriculum, but also as we mentioned, there's lots of curriculum out there that has competency-first focus. And a lot of those educators, a lot of them are saying, we just don't have time. We just don't have time. We don't have the space to actually engage in these conversations. And so creating time for that, I think, is the most essential step.
Yeah. No, I mean, we could talk forever about this, but I want to flip the conversation to the upcoming webinar that you're having.
Such a good topic.
I think that it's because this is where some of the pressure point comes in. We know that it's challenging, and you're right. We know there's gaps in practice. It's not because teachers aren't working hard and teachers don't care about their students. We know that exists, but we could talk about that assessment design piece all day, I'm sure, and we probably will at another time. But let's flip the conversation to AI and the webinar.
Yes. So Danielle has a webinar coming up. We will link it in this episode's description.
For sure.
It is free to register. You just have to register to get access to the Zoom link. But the headline, the title of it is AI Won't Pass This Test. We're really looking at how do we move from a place of AI cheating, which a lot of teachers are experiencing, to gather evidence of authentic learning. Give people a bit of a preview here, Danielle. Like, what do you think educators most need to unlearn about assessment in order to deal with the AI context that we're living in?
Yeah, well, we talked about rehumanizing too, right? And so learning is a process that requires connection, and not just once. It's meaningful connection over a period of time. So it really is about creating conditions where kids can start to build these skills in that process, build clarity about what this looks like. So, for example, I used to use this. I used to use this question in biology 12, just to bring some context to the question. In biology 12, I used to say, explain how a damaged AV valve in the left side of the heart could cause fluid to build up in the lungs. This used to be a provincial exam question for biology 12 exams. And I loved this question. And all a teacher needs to do is tweak this. So I used to use this question for problem solving, but now I use it for communication and problem solving, but I really focus on communication. So instead of just that question, it's now, okay, you are now a physician. I give them a role, right? This is a little bit of grasps tasks from Jay McTighe's work.
I love that.
Yes, but it's give them a role, okay? Because this is a complex task. I'm working on building them as communicators, okay? And as communicating science. And so give them a role. You are now a physician that has to explain to a family. There's an audience, okay? And the results from the test came back. There's fluid buildup in the lungs, and it's because of a damaged AV valve. You have to now have a conversation with the family about what that looks like and how that happened, and perhaps offer some next steps. Not every kid in my class is going to have the same outcome in how they communicate that. It will be different. And then I will scaffold this learning for them in a process-oriented approach. This is not something that I would give them and then just say, go do it. Because they could AI all of it. I would teach them how to execute the skill more meaningfully. So if they're going to say that the fluid in the lungs built up because there's a damaged AV valve and this is what caused it, and they talk about, I won't get into the science of it, but they go deep into the science of it. It really is then where I can ask them, well, why did you make that connection? What is it what is the evidence that you use to support that connection? And how do you then elaborate with the family? And most importantly, when you're speaking about the science, how are you connecting with the audience in a way where they understand it, right? Because these are family members that don't know a lot about the body. So what is it that you have to share so that they understand versus what is it that you may not go deeper into because it's way over their head and higher level. And then giving them voice and choice in that. And so the webinar is really about how do we create conditions for a process-oriented approach, working with kids over time. But then also, if we can't leverage grades as motivators anymore for these complex tasks because they don't work, okay, as motivators, then how do we really create conditions where kids are intrinsically motivated to engage in that task? And so it's really building a sense of autonomy and mastery and purpose. So giving them choice, creating conditions where learners can see they're growing in that communication skill and they become more confident. When we talk about rehumanizing this approach, it's like, just look at people. People engage in learning because they can see evidence of their growth, and then they dig in and they go further. I just was working with a school and I said, does anyone juggle? And someone put up their hand. I learned how to juggle. And I said, well, when you failed the first time, did you stop? No. Well, okay, so you kept going. Yeah, I tried. And then what kept you going? Well, because I was actually getting better at it. And so when we create conditions where kids and people can grow in mastery, they really become deeply engaged in that process. And then purpose, the last piece, I think is so important, that we build these real world authentic tasks, that they're purposeful. And that's like my biggest mission in shifting our system in schools is, why are we doing this task? What is it for? What purpose does it serve? So if I'm going to give a quiz on the 10 pieces of the heart or on blood pressure or whatever that looks like, it's, why am I doing that? What greater purpose does this serve for the learner to apply and transfer that learning in a competency or in a skill? And so it's being more intentional in that design. And then don't forget, you can't just design it and then leave learners to do it. You have to have these touch points and connection points where students can talk about their learning, where students, we can listen to how they're growing as learners in terms of the skills. And when we sit with kids and they speak on how they grew and what connections they're now making, that's them talking to you, not the AI bot.
Right.
And so it's so important to create those conditions where we have these connections and really celebrate the process with kids.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that whole idea of, I often think of it as augmented humanity, right? It's humanizing and bringing things back into. I want to talk though about the role of the teacher, and because AI is really forcing us to confront what do we really count as evidence of learning. We're having to confront that because we're not sure where things have come from. So as we move forward, as AI is a reality and it's not going away, that genie's out of the bottle. What role do you see teachers playing? Like, how does the role of the teacher shift in a way in helping students show their thinking, or how they make learning visible in ways that, say, technology can't replicate? What is the role? How does the role of the teacher evolve in this sort of new reality?
Well, I think I spoke a little bit about it in the fact that we're constantly in connection with kids.
Right.
And so I think Nat, I heard you say it last week. I think feedback is a dialogue, not a monologue, right? It's not the teacher is not the gatekeeper of success.
Right.
The teacher's role is to create conditions where you use assessment to empower the next steps, right? And assessment is just how do we elicit the information so that not only the teacher can pivot, right? But so that the student can pivot.
Yeah.
But the teacher has to teach the student how to use assessment to move forward in those next steps. And so, and then it's teaching kids, well, what is the evidence that we need to see to make those judgments on in terms of clarity, right? And so I really love Peter Liljedahl's work. I probably butchered his name. I'm sorry, but he was such an inspiration to me in terms of like making thinking visible.
Yeah.
And so it really is creating a space where kids can share their ideas, their thinking openly, again, really embracing the process-oriented approach, but also sharing ideas as a means to help elicit that evidence to really move learning forward in the classroom space and redefine the culture in the classroom space. It's also, as soon as you make thinking visible for kids, kids can learn how to see all the elements of clarity that match the criteria in these rubrics that we're creating in our classrooms. And we can use the rubric as a tool for learning. Oh my goodness.
What a crazy idea.
Mind-blowing.
What?
Like, the rubric should be a tool for learning, not judgment. I mean, if there's one thing.
That's some craziness right now.
If there's one thing I wish I could really get educators to embrace is to, once we clarify that criteria, it doesn't get locked away in a Google Drive folder. It doesn't live on the course outline. It like laminate it, put it on a ring. This is a tool for learning. And now we're going to talk about what this looks like. And now it's all about the teacher designing. So you talked about the role.
Yeah.
The teacher now designs conditions where kids can match the evidence in those rubrics and then understand. Because I think it was you, Tom, and I'm going to say it again, extending cannot be Narnia.
Yeah,
and
that's
that
right.
Is so unfair. It's so unfair. But think about it. If a kid has to guess, that's not fair.
That's right.
And I often will say, like, put yourself in the learner's seat, because honestly, over the last 10 years in my transformation as an educator in terms of assessment practice, I have spent more time thinking about how this would make learners feel.
Yeah.
Right. And that's that element of rehumanizing, but not to get too fluffy, because we're not lowering our standards.
No.
We never lower our standards. In fact, we really elevate our standards for learners to create conditions for learners to engage in that deeper learning.
Oh, go off. Preach. I feel like now it's a fun time just to include this little fun fact that a couple years ago, the OECD, or the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, actually did a giant global study of the most hard to find yet in demand skills in the world.
Yeah.
Do you know what was right up there in the top 3? They called it learning and development. And when you click on it, the description is basically what you just said, Danielle.
Oh.
It was assessment literacy.
Yeah.
The ability to set meaningful goals, establish criteria about what it means to achieve those goals, gather evidence to make decisions about next step in the journey, and to make maneuvers so that you can achieve the goal. I literally read this and was like, I've never felt so validated in the work I do in my life.
Yeah,
I think I even made a reel about it. It blew up. I was like, people, it's right here. Like, everyone in the world is focused on this thing.
Right
We're
there.
just, it's sometimes the burden we have is the language that we have to carry with us from these old systems. And assessment has so much baggage.
Yeah.
But rather than go down that rabbit hole, because we are nearing the end of our time with you, Danielle,
Yeah.
we would love to ask, I mean, just to zoom out a little bit here, because, you've joined us in the Canadian Assessment Center, and we're so, so grateful to have you as a member of the team. And we're excited about so many of the things coming up this year.
Yeah.
But we're curious for you, as, you've done such rich, deep work across BC, and now you're looking up and setting your sights across the rest of the country. What are you most excited about as you head into this work with us?
I hope I don't cry on this one, but
it's all good. Save space for crying.
Right? It's a dream. First of all, to work with an incredible group of colleagues who are equally obsessed and passionate. Here's the priority for me, is passionate about working for the betterment of our kids. It's really about creating spaces where kids are shaping their identity as learners and honoring their own unique strengths they bring to the table, rather than focusing on all the things they're not perfect about. I am a perfectionist as a person. I really struggled to receive feedback myself because of the system I went through, and I had to get the high 90s. I played the game of school so well. And so, but it also, and yes, it opened up doors for me. However, it also, as a 45-year-old woman, I have things that come into my life where my identity has been shaped by my experiences. So I am excited to be a part of this, because we can really change the conversation about what assessment is. And even saying what assessment is, it's just what teaching and learning is, what good teaching and learning is, and how we use it to build confident and empowered kids for that next generation, right? And it's like you said, Nat, it's this transferable skill set that is the most essential for our kids. And that is my mission.
Yeah.
And then second to that is building more meaningful, purposeful experiences for our kids to not have an impact one day, but to actually have an impact in their schools now, because all learners are incredibly capable. All of them, every single one of them, if we create conditions to nurture them and coach them in ways where they reach their potential and keep growing. And it's when they see the impact they can have on not only themselves and shaping their identity, but their classmates and peers and their school, community, and the world, that this will completely transform the landscape. So I am deeply passionate about being a part of this. I'm excited. I can't help but just yes, let's go.
We love it.
Love
we
it.
love it. We
Mic
love
drop
it.
energy for the
Listeners, now you understand why
You get it.
Danielle is part of our team. I know the word passion gets thrown around a lot, but I can assure you, listeners, that Danielle's passion is 1,000% authentic. And you can understand why so many schools have already, began reaching out and working with Danielle, and because not just her knowledge and her background, but the impact that she's having. So listeners, if your school or district would love the opportunity, and really, honestly, I don't know why you wouldn't. She is amazing. The opportunity to have Danielle facilitate some assessment PD, please reach out to us at the Canadian Assessment Center. Our email is info@canadianassessment.ca. Danielle, where else can people find you? Social media, where are other spaces? How can people connect with you and maybe continue the conversation that you've started here as people get to know you more? Where can they find you?
I am on Instagram, so they can follow me at dpalo_ed. I am slowly building that space. Again, learning is a process.
It's all good. All good.
It's all good. It's all good.
And you can email me, but if you want to get in connection with me, email that email address that Tom just said at Canadian Assessment Center, in terms of providing professional learning and support. I'm on Facebook as well. And so you just Google Danielle Paloposki Education, and it'll be there. Email me anytime. I honestly can't encourage educators enough to just drop me an email. Sometimes people think they're being a burden, and that's not at all. And I left my role so that I could serve the schools and educators, and I really understand the the depth of this work in terms of the challenges educators are facing. And educators are doing a huge heavy lift right now. So I want to be there for them as much as I possibly can. So don't hesitate. Reach out, email. I'm happy to help and support.
Yeah. One more time, info@canadianassessment.ca. You can reach out to us and we'll connect you with Danielle if you want to continue any work with her.
Absolutely. And Danielle, thank you from the bottom of our hearts for being here, for being a part of the team and being part of this work to rehumanize assessment across Canada. We're so thankful for you.
Thankful for you both as well. Thanks so much.
Okay, that's it for this week. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode of Assess That.
And don't forget to follow Assess That on Twitter or Instagram. We've got links in the show notes for both of those.
And if you have any special topics you'd like for us to talk about, you can DM either of us on those platforms or send us an email.
Yes, and a reminder to check the show notes for links for all of those upcoming professional learning events.
Please subscribe, rate, and review the podcast if that helps grow the podcast reach.
And finally, if you like what you are hearing, please keep spreading the word about the podcast to your friends, your colleagues, or on social media. We would really appreciate that.
And remember, assessment isn't just a tool, it's a conversation.
And together, we're here to make it a better one.
We'll see you in 2 weeks, everyone.